Welcome to Gardens of Earthly Delight, the podcast dedicated to exploring our connection to Earth. I'm Andrew Valenti, and I'll be your host and guide. Welcome to Episode 7 with the home gardening guru and champion of the soil, Charles Dowding. In 1982, Charles developed a revolutionary method of home and market gardening called no-dig. He's the author of 16 books, but he waited 20 years before writing his first one, making sure his methods were tested and trialed year after year before sharing his knowledge with the public. I visited him at Home Acres, his farm in Somerset, England, back in late February. We talked about cardboard mulch, copper tools, Humanure, the power of water, and why no-dig works so extraordinarily well. It was an honor to sit with Charles at his farm and to learn about his joy of vegetables that turned into a life of learning, observing, and teaching from the soil beneath his feet.
The farm and the garden I was working in certainly weren't no-dig and they weren't organic. Mm-hmm. So that's where I got interested in that when I was at university. And when I came down from university, I thought, I'm going to give it a go. And I started a small market garden of, an acre and a half, about 6,000 square meters on the family farm. And that was in 1982. So it's all been going along since then.
And where is that?
It's actually 6 miles from here.
Okay.
I've moved around a bit, and that was my first market garden was in South Somerset, basically. And I'm only here through, first of all, then I went to France in the 1990s. I was there for 7 years and then moved back here to actually back near my original one, but in a different market garden, which I started. And I came here when I sadly separated from my wife in 2012, and I needed to find somewhere and found this place, which has turned out ideal. And it's close enough. I was still in touch with my children 6 miles away, and this is level ground. The first time I've ever had level ground of really good soil.
This morning I had Dowding cider. Is that?
Yeah, that's my brother.
That's your brother. Okay.
Yeah, he's going great guns on that.
So is that the same property?
He's back. Yeah, he's at the original farm.
Oh, okay.
And he's switched from farming now. He's really concentrating on apple juice and cider, which in Somerset, this area is quite a thing actually. The apples grow like a weed almost, and
in the hedges.
Yeah, in the hedges even. And I was just looking, I got some eating apples like Jonagold, which are still in really good condition. This is late February that we're recording this. And we've still got fantastic vegetables and fruits stored from last autumn.
Yeah. So back in the 80s when you were in university, how did you discover no-dig? I mean, was no-dig even a term?
No, it wasn't actually. I think it was me who kind of invented the term, but there was in an early, a friend had lent me some early journals of the Soil Association. Do you know what I mean? That's the British organic umbrella body, which was only founded in 1946. And they immediately started producing monthly magazines, which they called Mother Earth. And it's actually,
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's quite up to date now because a lot of what they were discussing in those days was things like mycorrhizal networks in the 1940s were actually quite main and hot news. And that led on to people thinking about, at least, not cultivating soil and breaking them up. But there was also not an understanding. Vegetables, it was thought in the 80s, didn't use the mycorrhizal network. That was a common understanding. But nonetheless, in this Soil Association Mother Earth journal, the guy lent me, there was an article called Not Digging. It was by a journalist actually who had a garden and he just experimented and he was saying what the results were brilliant. And there's also another garden called F.C. King up in northwest England, Leverhulme Gardens, who were also experimenting. He wrote a book called A Different Approach to Weeds or something like that. Came out in 1951 with Faber and Faber. But in that he had a chapter comparing the results of digging and not digging. This was a conventional head gardener and really good results actually. So I could see potential, but there weren't many people, if any, doing it when I started it. This again was 1940s. There was a bit more of it. By the 1980s, not so much.
Right.
And I was drawn to it because, firstly, the mycorrhiza, I felt it was wrong that they wouldn't associate with vegetables. And in fact, it turns out they do, so that's really good news. But it just felt right to me. not to till the earth. But when I'd be talking about my gardening in the 1980s, I was also organic. So I was organic and no dig. Mm-hmm. And in the 80s, organic was still pretty radical.
Right.
and I was even on television being interviewed about it. And the guy asked me, he said, all this is grown without any chemicals or fertilizers. And, he's looking at beautiful cabbages and things. And I said, yeah. It's like, for me, that was like normal.
Right.
But organic, that's where I kind of began. And my first book actually is Organic Gardening, and that came out 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I'm just rewriting it, in fact, because there's quite a lot of my understandings have improved and developed since then. So it's a learning journey all the time, but no dig has certainly, that phrase we developed in 2015 roughly.
Okay.
I tried to copyright or patent it and was told by the people in the office, no, you can't do that because some people use that term already. I think probably from my work, but it was starting to get out there, and now I'm really happy that it really is.
Yeah, totally. So that was 20 years ago, but that's your first book.
That was my first book, yeah.
So that's a significant amount of time after you had started.
Yes, and I'm so grateful for that, because there wasn't so much interest in my work that might have led to a book until the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. So I had plenty of time just to quietly get on and perfect the methods.
Right.
Because I only really discovered cardboard mulching in 2007, for example, mulching with cardboard to kill the weeds. I think I was the first person to do that, I think anyway. I hadn't heard of anyone before. And it's just such a simple, beautiful way to smother weeds without disturbing the soil, put some compost on top and start planting straight away.
Yeah.
But it's, 20 years ago that I first developed that.
Cardboard's interesting. So I share videos about using cardboard for no-dig gardening. Uh-huh. And I'm sure you've gotten the flack about cardboard. So I'm curious, of course you want to remove the tape, staples, use cardboard that has minimal ink on it. Mm-hmm. But what's your opinion on the glues that are used? And for people who are complete purists, what's the best alternative?
Cardboard. Because, my reasoning is you only use it once.
Yeah. Some
people, for some reason, seem to think you put the cardboard down every winter, and you can see how weed-free my garden is here. Mm-hmm. Half acre of beds, so you'd be hard pushed to find a weed, because the initial cardboard smothers most of the perennials, and we can dig out the remaining ones with a trowel, just individually. So for no dig at the beginning, it's just brilliant weed smother, but after that, it's not. So I just figure for the amount of, if you don't use cardboard, well, how are you going to do it? There's going to be some soil disturbance more than maybe you'd like, or you need a ton extra compost. You need thicker depths of compost. So it means you can do it with less compost. It just makes it feasible. And I think also it's not really considered enough how the life in soil, like the fungi, the biology of soil, can break down things that we don't even know about. I'm sure it's doing it all the time. Like Paul Stamets, has done great work on this, hasn't he? Mm-hmm. And people say he's even used fungi to break up oil spills and that kind of thing on the ocean. So I go with the value of all this fungi and biology, which no dig is allowing to stay there and increase and encourages to deal with any of those small problems.
Right. So it's pretty minimal.
Yeah, I mean,
and the earth knows what to do with it.
I really feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you said, you use that word purist, and I get that. Some people are like that. If you want to be really pure, then you've got to find other ways. But it's very difficult actually in gardening to be totally purist, because what about the rain that falls? I know some people who won't eat vegetables grown in the rain because the rain is now quite polluted, and so they grow everything under cover. That's maybe not the most sustainable option. It's just, it's difficult when you get to that level of detail to be so pure.
Yeah, it is. And that's something that we can't control.
Well, yeah, exactly. The other things are happening, like the chemtrails for the rain and things like that, which I don't mind speaking up about, and that really bugs me. But having said that, I don't want to major on that. The main thing is that to get the soil really healthy and grow really wonderfully healthy plants. That's what I'm about.
Yeah. Yeah. My garden in Italy, we weren't directly next to an airport, but there was a small airport not too far away. Okay. And it was used by military jets. And so once a week, every couple weeks, there would just be this low-flying military jet flying right over my garden.
Wow.
And all I can think about is the jet exhaust
right.
dripping down. Yeah. And then another time there was, because it was right inside of a town, there was a big fireworks display. And all the fireworks stuff came right down into my garden.
Are quite polluting, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the noise.
Yeah. So I decided my second year to mostly just grow flowers and things that I wasn't going to be eating, because for me, it was just the joy of gardening.
Okay.
And I was living in Italy. Yeah. So I was surrounded by fresh produce.
Really good food.
Really good food.
Yeah.
And so I just moved towards inedible things and just pretty things. But building the soil.
Today, most of those clouds, I would say, are artificial. You know, you see the lines in the sky and turning into a white haze. But like I say, you know, I could get really depressed if I spend too much time thinking about that.
Sure. Well, I know in America there are states that are banning it.
Yeah, I'm encouraged by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any talk like that?
Our government's gone the other way. They declared publicly that this government has given last year £50 million a year to what they call fund research into it.
Fun?
Yeah. I think they're doing it anyway. It's just a bit of a con. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's
sad.
It's divisive because it's hard for people to wrap their minds around.
Yeah.
But I'm curious though. So because you've been gardening for so long.
Yes.
And we're in a time of climate change. And so what changes have you experienced firsthand?
Some weather changes is how I'd put it.
Weather changes, yeah.
I hope I'm not going to make your podcast too controversial. You can edit this bit out if you want.
No,
I don't believe in climate. That phrase "climate change" for me does not make sense. Carbon dioxide's a very beneficial gas to have in the atmosphere. It makes plants grow more. The amount that's actually in the atmosphere compared to historically is not actually hugely significant, but there's an agenda, a hidden agenda. Nobody's declared it, to really promote this idea and get people afraid of climate change. And then they're easier to control by things like locking down in 15-minute cities and everything. But that's enough said on that. But basically, what I have noticed, to answer your question more directly, is that it has got somewhat warmer. But, you know, it hasn't got warmer everywhere. We've really benefited in the UK more than anywhere. But like, we had a mild winter this year. But to give you an example, in Sweden, because I know people there, they've had a really cold winter and you know, even unusually cold. So it's often, and you know, in the States too, you've got these ice storms, haven't you, at the moment, things like that. So that is more weather events, I would say, and I think there's some geoengineering going on to encourage those, and that's what makes the headlines, and it's often then called climate change. But basically what I notice here is the seasons have got a bit longer. It's been fantastic for growing. So we're starting a bit earlier, like 24th of February today, it's 14 degrees centigrade, 57 Fahrenheit, just for example. And that's quite
gorgeous, and it's February.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I grew up in zone 7A.
Ah, interesting.
And so, what zone is this?
This is 8, actually. 8B.
8B.
So we're a high zone because of the mild ocean currents that go close to us from the North Atlantic Drift coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. So 51 degrees latitude. We're the same latitude as Nova Scotia, Newfoundland. So we would be much colder without that ocean current, and that's what really saves it and makes it a long season possible here. But the corollary to that is we don't have a really hot, cracking hot summer. The temperature rarely goes above, say, mid-80s, 30 degrees centigrade, and the average in summer, the average afternoon temperature is 21 centigrade, 70 Fahrenheit. So I'm actually struggling to grow things like peppers outside, and that's why it's useful to have the greenhouse and polytunnel for them.
So you went to school for gardening, for farming? No.
I went to Cambridge actually, and I was reading geography, and you know, because at the time I wasn't sure. When I first went up to university, age 18, I thought, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Geography is a kind of very general subject, and I just enjoyed being there really. But I got interested in my second year of doing the 3 in organic growing, and also someone lent me a book called Animal Rights, which got me thinking about ways we farm. I grew up on a dairy farm with dairy cows, and actually I became a vegetarian just overnight in 1979.
And you still are a vegetarian?
No, I have been most of my life, and I eat mostly vegetables, but now I'm not purist about it, and I will eat some meat and fish when it's around or on often. I really enjoy a piece of meat, actually, but what I like more than anything is vegetables, and that's and pulses and beautiful bread that I make and that kind of thing. That's my staple diet for most of my life.
But so you went to school for geography. So what got you into, why did you choose to go gardening full time?
Because I wanted to, firstly, I wanted healthy food for myself to eat. And I couldn't think of any profession I could join that would appeal to me more. I really discovered quite quickly that I love growing plants. And in my first year of starting, 1982, I realized that I had the potential because my family had a farm, lots of acres, lots of ground, and were happy to let me play around with a bit. They thought I was just messing around, so I took over an acre and a half, 6,000 square meters. That was my first garden. And I actually rotivated the soil because I didn't know any other way to kill the turf, the sod. And then I shaped beds using a spade into the loose soil, 2-foot paths, 5-foot beds. That was my early attempt at no dig, because I made the beds and then that was it. No more cultivation after that, which for me was a bit nerve-wracking at first because no one else was doing that, and I thought, is this going to work? Everyone else is tilling the soil. Why? They must be doing that for a reason. And actually, it turns out they're not. They're doing it out of habit. That's what I feel now, anyway, because it works so well. But as long as you can put a little bit, I wasn't using as much compost as I do now. I put about 1 centimetre, ½ inch of compost on all my beds once a year back in those days. And I put some straw mulch that I got for free from my brother because he had a lot of straw in the pathways. So I was adding a bit of organic matter there as well. And it just works so well. And the biggest advantage I noticed with no dig right from the beginning was few weeds. And that was the thing that has struck me when I started market gardening. Like I say, I didn't go to college, but I toured around different organic market gardens in summer 1982, my first starting point, and noticed that what I was seeing as much as crops was weeds, and worried looking farmers in almost every case because they weren't in control of their weeds. And if you're not in control of your weeds, you can still grow things for sure, but it's so much more work, and you never really feel on top of things. So I wanted a method that really allowed me to not have too many weeds that I couldn't keep on top of them. And I found that with no digging, you're not disturbing the soil, leave the weed seeds in place, you're mulching on top, you create a beautiful weed-free zone, and it just works so well.
So driving in, I drove past a horse farm. Do you collect their manure?
I'd love to, but actually it's a different one that you wouldn't have driven past, is where I got it. We got some yesterday, actually.
Okay.
But I mainly use horse manure fresh to make a hotbed, which we've just made in the greenhouse. And that's heating up as we speak. And that's for propagation. So around here, there's almost more cows than horses. So I would happily use horse manure or cow manure. And I also buy some mushroom compost and green waste compost to supplement my own. I can make about 50-60% of what I use. And so already that's 10, 11 tons homemade compost, and the rest I'm bringing in.
And I've heard you start to talk about Humanure. Is that I think that's really fascinating because it's so scary to a lot of people. I mean, if you were, I think actually, and I'm going to ask you this later on, but there's something about gardening for many people that can be scary. Gardening in general.
I can relate to that. Yeah. Okay.
But now I'm curious to talk about that because you have some years of trialing this and experimenting with it. So
this gives me the absolute confidence to say things like this. That's why you asked me, well, I didn't write my first book for a while. I'm happy about that. I think there's a danger now, especially with social media, a lot of quite young, inexperienced people are suddenly appearing there with advice for the ages. Be careful. And I'd say to any people scrolling or listening, don't believe everything you read or hear. There's a lot of it I know is not right. But I won't say anything until I've tried it enough to be sure. And I've been using this human manure from the toilet in the garden for 11 years now, and always noticed that plants grow really well from it. But I've only dared in the last 4 years to put it on vegetables because, like you, it's like is that scary? I don't know if that is the word, but yeah, it's lack of knowledge, really. We don't know what's in there, and we've been conditioned. I think we're conditioned with false information to make us afraid of it, and then we'll go and buy bloody fertilizers. It's that kind of thing. So what I've noticed where I've used it, and mine is very aerobic. I think that's important to say. So we're not pooing into a big plastic airless container, and that was what makes it all really smelly, and the wee as well, the urine. Urine goes into hay and straw that goes on the compost heap, so that's brilliant. And then
so that's separated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, I don't have a separated, but it's more like if you go to the loo, you just want to pee. Well, you pee on that side into the hay or straw. And if you really want to poo, there'll be some pee goes down there. But the whole compost loo is surrounded by trees and bushes, so I figure that soaks up any excess that might leach away. But most of it is staying there because what we do is we put a bit of wood shavings or sawdust on top of after each visit. So you've automatically got a nice mix as you're going up of green and brown. The fresh manure is green equivalent in composting terms. And the compost that comes out, it looks quite woody actually because of the wood flakes that last a fair time, but it grows plants. It's just amazing. And last year I did a trial on 3 beds, and one had one we forked actually, to put a fork in like broad forking. Just to see what effect that has. And the bed next to it is no dig, but with the same compost as the forked bed. And then the 3rd bed is also no dig, but it has the animal manure, in this case human manure. 2 squash plants in each bed. And the results were 16.5 kilos where we'd forked, 25 kilograms where we hadn't forked, and same compost. And the human manure, 53 kilos.
Wow.
Nearly double.
Wow.
That really blew me away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential in it, and I feel also, like I was saying about the biology in soil, I think we need to trust it more. It can deal with things like that. Otherwise, people have been using human manure for forever. Basically, look at China, for example, and there's a wonderful book, Farmers of 40 Centuries, by a guy called F.H. King. And if, anyone who didn't know much about it, I'd recommend you to check out that book. But it's 100 years old now, that book. But it basically, because it's detailing what they were doing at that time.
Wow.
And having fantastic results from the toilet compost.
Fascinating. Well, porta potties. If you go into a porta potty, I think a lot of the modern ones have a side for just urine.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that a lot of porta potty companies have contracts with fertilizer companies to sell that urea as pure nitrogen.
Wow, yeah.
I worked on a conventional farm, so we get bags of nitrogen, and it was just urea.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it comes from humans.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So even when you're going the conventional route, I mean,
yeah. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
What I try and get away from, though, is that sort of way of looking at it in terms of fertilizer. For me, no dig. When you leave the soil alone, the biology gets really active, and put a bit of compost on top. Because of the really active biology, you're getting much more value from that compost, whether it's well-rotted manure or plant-based compost. And so I never use any feeds, even fertilizer. Feeds and fertilizers for me is a term I don't use, except to say I don't use them. Because I'm finding I get, even the polytunnels, fantastic tomatoes, without any feeding or fertilizer. And I feel not using any feed, you get a more balanced growth, and plants that are less sappy, less interest to aphids, for example, and so it reduces the pest burden as well. So in many ways we're looking at all of this, and that's the fascinating thing about gardening, isn't it? We all have a slightly different take on everything, really.
Well, I think your approach is great because you have all of these years of experience. But something that I appreciate about following your journey is your side-by-side trials. Because you do have a dig bed here, correct?
Yeah, that's a different trial. It's those 2 beds right there, actually.
Okay.
So there's one bed that is dug every December and one is no dig, and they both have the same compost. They both have the same amount of compost. The dig bed, we dig it in into trenches, and the no dig, that compost sits on top. So already you saved yourself 2.5 hours by not doing the digging. But then it was interesting because I had a PhD student here last year who wanted to measure the organic matter content of those 2 beds to see if there's any variation. And that's 12 years. This is 13th year now, but at the time it's 12 years of running this trial. And so having the same amount of compost over each of those 12 years on each bed, and the amount of organic matter or carbon in the dug bed is 14%, or it was 14% last year, which is very high. You know, most farm soils, if you looked, would be 2, 3, 4%. A good grassland soil might be 5, 8%, or, you know, a market garden perhaps. But 14%, even in the dug bed, but the no-dig bed had 18. And that I found fascinating, because 4% extra carbon in the soil from having the same amount of carbon put on there.
Significant.
So clearly the digging is releasing, I think it's releasing it as CO2. You know, we need the carbon in the soil. The carbon's really valuable, and that's a big strength of no-dig. You're keeping it all there and getting much more value from it.
Yeah. Another thing I've seen you use, which I love and I use myself, are copper garden tools.
Great. Yeah.
Talk about those a little bit.
Yeah. Copper was discovered as a garden tool or farming tool by Viktor Schauberger, who was a very intuitive Austrian forester around 100 years ago. He had so many amazing ideas, but rather like Rudolf Steiner, his own writing is quite difficult to decipher. He's quite intense. But he was a scientist, and you know, he explained things in a scientific way. He really understood what was going on. People asked him, "How do you know that?" And he tuned into water. He was mad keen on the water and its qualities, and he would go and sit beside lakes and rivers and let the water take over his consciousness. And mad as this might sound, he came up with so many brilliant discoveries, like how to float logs uphill. He made a flume. You know, that was a big problem in Austria where he was in the 1900s, how to get the logs off the mountains. And mostly it's downhill, but sometimes there were little uphill bits. And he worked out with understanding water and the power of vortices, and which later was then discovered by Rudolf Steiner, or promoted by him, making vortices for the biodynamic preparations. So a lot of these more esoteric, or which should be mainstream ideas, you know, they have similar roots, and the quality of water is one. And what Schauberger also noticed was that iron ploughs pulled at some speed through soil breaks the capillary structure of soil and enables water retention. It decreases water retention possibility. It's just broken that field of capillary possibility. And so, you know, that's where no-dig really scores, obviously. But for farmers who want to plough, Schauberger developed a copper plough. I think it was copper plated, and had amazing results from it. So good that he got closed down by the council at the end of World War II, because the council were taking big cuts from, this is the story anyway, from farmers who were buying fertilizer, and the fertilizer companies would pay the council officials that this should carry on. And when Schauberger's copper plough started having amazing results and the farmers stopped using fertilizer, he had a council official visit him and say, "I'm sorry, I'm going to revoke your license." So, you know, that's an example of why these wonderful ideas struggle to get out there, because there's vested interest. The power of money is so strong, and it can be used to stop really good knowledge surfacing. But since your listeners have got this chance, do check out. You can find Schauberger. I'm sure you'll put a link to.
Yeah, well, I've seen that documentary a few times.
Oh, great!
It's great.
Yeah.
So his bio plow. So he designed it in the way that a mole.
That's it.
Makes a tunnel.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, you'll see mole tracks, but they're under the soil. They're not tilling it up.
Right.
So a traditional plow will foot the soil,
drop it all on,
so that it's exposed.
Yeah.
But his plow aerated. All underground.
As well as, there was a way, wasn't there? A bit of turning to smother the weeds, but not too much or something, maybe. But yeah, and so anyway, in gardening terms, now we've got copper trowels. I love my copper hoe as well, with a very thin blade. We call them copper. It should be bronze, actually, strictly speaking. 5% tin for a bit of extra strength. But yeah, I really love those. And I really love also, I've got these magnetic devices on my hose. You can see them out there. And that structures the water, which is based on the work of the fourth phase of water by a scientist who's never got, remember, he's in Vancouver, Seattle. And that's just, I found that makes quite a difference, because I can see it in my polytunnel where we've got winter salads, for example, at the moment, that are watered only with that, because it doesn't rain in the tunnel. Outside, it's hard to get more of a true reading, because there's water that hasn't been treated falling as rain. But anyway, basically, yeah, strong growth from doing that, and it's not expensive. It's a wonderful way of
And
increasing.
is that just magnets? Is it
Yeah.
magnetic?
Exactly. It's two halves of a magnet which hold each other in place by magnetic appeal. And in the middle, there's enough space for the hose or a garden or your water pipe in the house, actually. And it structures, as it's called, but it also softens the water, interestingly. And if you've got hard water and you want to soften it, I would say rather than buy a water softener, check out Abbey Max, are the people who make in the UK anyway. They sell in America too.
Yeah, I've seen them around, yeah.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, and with copper, I mean, it has unproven benefits. But
unproven, what does that mean? It just means that, nobody with scientific means really has had a proper look at it.
Right. But some of the obvious benefits are it moves into the soil easier because there's less friction than iron, steel.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Because you're no dig, but there are times when you dig.
Yeah, absolutely. And using copper trowel to plant potatoes or tomatoes, I'm putting a tool in the soil, that kind of thing. Another value of copper is it's not magnetic, so it doesn't break the Earth's magnetic fields anytime you use it near soil. Some people say that slugs navigate by the magnetic lines of the force, so that it encourages things to keep moving, not broken, and things stay in balance more.
I've noticed a difference because I've done trials with my copper hoe, and next to a spot that I'd just weeded by hand or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And the slugs were more attracted to the spot where the copper hoe did not go.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, it's people need to see year after year, trial after trial.
Yeah. Oh, but even so, it's really valid to do that and to follow it up ideally, but you're not because you're traveling around now. But for anyone staying in one place for a length of time, we could all do more of our own trials. So my Dig No Dig is now 14th year, the one where we do the forking strip. So 1/3 of that area is forked, as in broad fork. And over 10 years now of doing that, the forking has depressed the yield by 8% compared to leaving it unforked and no dig. So I really want to mention that just because I notice quite often people call themselves no dig, but they're broad forking. And there might be a case to make for that if you're starting with solid clay and you want to loosen it at the beginning. But I would say ongoing, it doesn't need to be an annual maintenance chore.
To bring this to scale.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that because, this occurs to a lot of people. And this is where I find I need to emphasize, which I don't feel is emphasized enough, the difference between farming and market gardening.
Huge difference.
And the same word tends to get used for farming. The same farming word tends to get used for market gardeners as well, unfortunately. So many people would call me a farmer and they say, why can't you farm like this on 100 acres, say? And I say, because that would be farming where it's much bigger scale and lower value crops. So no dig, like I'm doing it and advocating it, is for high value, intensive, some people call it bio-intensive, vegetable growing, where you can justify the import or use of extra compost to get the soil really healthy and fertile. And that's a completely different approach to, say, a big field of 20 acres, maybe 8 hectares, where it wouldn't be feasible to lay loads of cardboard compost. So that's where you need some kind of special tool for min-till, and some kind of tilling. Surface tillage, I think in that context, is very difficult to avoid. So that's what I would say. I wouldn't try and ever do this on more than maybe 2 acres, maybe a hectare. Even that would be a lot, because from my half acre here, so 2,000 square meters, last year we sold £42,000 worth of produce. Wow, that's like $55,000 probably. That's already quite a bit. And it just illustrates how you can get so much value from a small piece of ground using these methods. So I'm tuning in more to gardeners, I would say, than farmers. And this works so well for people wanting to grow just their own food.
Yeah.
Do 65 square meters. I often quote the example of the piece of ground I record the yields from over there. 65 square meters is about 700 square feet And we get from that piece of ground, last year we got 600 kilos of food. That's over half a ton.
Yeah.
And that would be enough vegetables, I reckon, for most families, actually, from not a huge piece of ground.
Right. And then growing nutrient-dense crops, what are some of the...
Yeah, again, that's another beautiful question. How do you measure nutrient density? That's I think is one big factor, because much as people like the no-till regenerative, there's a lot of interest in nutrient density, but I think we haven't got the tools to really measure it yet. So I think some of it is speculation. But I'm sure that if you grow in soil that is not disturbed, so you've got the full strength of all the biological networks, both the mycorrhizae and the fungi, the rhizophagy network, that is going to enable your plants to be much more full of nutrients than if the soil's been broken up and messed around.
Which takes some time. So if somebody...
Yes or no? Well, it depends what you're starting with.
So, okay, for me, for example, I'm going to be moving to the Netherlands this year. And we have a very small backyard, completely filled with pavers.
Pavers?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So there's no growing space.
Are you allowed to take them up?
Yeah. So for me, starting at zero,
Yeah.
removing
Yeah.
concrete
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not knowing the state of the soil, the health of the soil, if it would.
And do you know if there might even be gravel under the pavers, or
who knows?
Find out when
so
you
it's a really old building. So the house
okay.
I'm moving into was built in the 1300s.
Oh wow!
So it used to be, at one point it was a shoemaker. It was renovated in the 1600s. And there might have been a blacksmith there at one point. So I don't know what kind of heavy metals or toxins are in that soil, but that's several hundred years of...
Yeah, but it's not... Well, it's iron, isn't it? It is blacksmith.
But these are the things that I think about, because I know how our plants take up.
Yeah.
Our plants are reflection of the soil.
Sure.
And if we're taking that in...
Yeah. Plants, for me, my favorite way of doing a soil test is grow some plants. So I think the first thing you should do as soon as you get there is even take out just one slab, put some compost, and see how anything grows, just from the very beginning. But that wouldn't stop me using that space.
It's not going to stop me.
Okay, great. Brilliant. I mean, people are often asking this sort of question, and often we don't have the precise answer. But, go by your feeling a bit and look at the plants around the edge as well, and they'll be rooting into that space a bit if you've got fruit trees and bushes, and if they're looking healthy, well, that's a really good sign. But yeah, so starting from scratch like you will be, I would aim to put a good 15, 20 centimeters of organic matter on top of that soil. And I deliberately didn't use the word compost there because, it can be any organic matter, even old wood chip, it could be old tree leaves, whatever's available locally. Old manure from animals is really good for sure.
I'll be near the beach, so hopefully I'll find some seaweed.
Seaweed. Well, there you go. Yeah, that's a good.
I love.
That's a good shout.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say there's nearly always possibilities. You've got to really think outside the box sometimes and how you use them. But I've used seaweed as the only mulch, and I've seen people doing that on sand.
Yeah.
6 inches, 15 centimeters of seaweed in the autumn. A lot of it disappears through the summer, but it's got taken in. No dig. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And often you don't have to rinse it. You don't have to rinse the salt water.
No, exactly. Salt's good as well.
You just grab it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put it on.
Yeah.
Do you have a spiritual practice when it comes to gardening? Is it something more than just your job, or was it something more than just your job at one point?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if I'd use that word or describe it in that way, but there's so many ways of talking about that kind of approach as feeling-based. Just feeling behind what you see and feeling the energy. I've actually wrote a book that came out last spring called Energy Gardening, because that's where I link into using the water, the copper tools, and the power of intention. So what you in the States call green thumb, and we call it green finger. I'm sure that's what it is. Some people just do it, can grow things. I think it's because they're tuning in really nicely. But if you feel you haven't got that, you can cultivate it.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, but force of intention, don't underestimate that. If you really want something enough, it will happen. So that's the kind of, if you like, the spirit aspect of what I do here. is a lot of kind of invisible feeling energy work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I spoke with a Hopi farmer, and one of the things that's been passed down for hundreds of generations is singing to your plants. And that's vibration, that's connection.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And I always sing to my seeds when I...
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Well, that's vibration, isn't it? It's sound.
Yeah.
Sound is an amazing force. Viktor Schauberger, when he was exploring, he was looking at what everyone was doing to learn himself. And there was one farmer in his region in the Austrian Alps who was famous for having the best crops, better than anyone else. And no one quite knew what he did to achieve it. And so Schauberger went to see him. This would have been in about 1910. And his son was there, the farmer's son. And he said, "Where's your father?" And he said, "Oh, he's doing his thing up there." The son did not agree with what his father was doing. He'd been to college. This is how the good traditional knowledge gets beaten out of people. Yeah. And the father was stirring water and singing to it. So he was getting the sound quality of, it's called tonsure singing, apparently. It's an old-fashioned medieval, probably earlier way of improving water quality through sound. And then flicking that soil onto his farm, just using sticks. And what he was doing was making vortices in the water while he was singing. It's very similar to the preparations, the method of stirring the preparations encouraged by Steiner.
Yeah, with biodynamics.
He so-called invented biodynamics in 1924. Yeah. Well, he invented what became biodynamics. But yeah, these basically building on traditional methods and understandings. But sound is one, of the vortices is very much the other one. The power of vortices making them one way and then the other way, and that pulls in energy from the universe. And when you flick that water onto your soil, I use a paintbrush actually, and so droplets of this water are going on the ground, and I just think of them like energy bombs. They're landing there, exploding with their, not literally, all the good intention that you put in. I do intention. So I'm stirring my water. I do this twice a year. Stir the water with the intention of fantastic growth, top fertility in the soil, wonderful vibrancy and power in the plants, and few pests and all those kinds of things. So that's another way of doing it. It doesn't cost much and it's wonderful.
Yeah. And it connects you so much more to the process.
Yes. Strong connection.
Yeah. Beautiful. And I think about another thing I talked about with the Hopi farmer was holding seeds in your mouth before planting them.
Did they do that?
Yeah.
How interesting. Because I read about that first in a book called Anastasia.
Right, which is a novel. So I think in that book, it says, and I brought this up, it says that the seeds will read your DNA and then grow to...
That's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah.
To help. I haven't read the book. This is just from people in my community that have shared this with me. Yeah. And so now I'm it's like telephone, relaying it.
Yeah.
But the idea, which I like, is that the seeds read your DNA. Yeah. And then when they're growing specifically for you. Yeah. And so if you're lacking in something, if you need something extra,
they pick that up and
they'll produce a little bit more.
It's really, I think that's beautiful. Yeah. Whether or not you could prove that, I don't know. But to me, it makes sense. And I think if you believe that when you are sowing your seeds and do it yourself, it's going to work for you.
It is.
Whereas some research are trialing it in an objective way, this is the problem with reductionist science, really. You lose all feeling, and everything is supposedly just rational observation, and we miss so much.
Yeah, so much to experience just by observation.
Absolutely.
And I feel like has that been very much your method of just
it
observing?
Is. I've had lab tests done on my soil over the years, and they've never really correlated in my eyes with what's happening. And I had a biological lab test done about 10 years ago, and they said your soil is low in fungi and needs remediation for that. And I was looking at my plants, and they're all so healthy and strong, and I just thought, no, I don't believe that. How can some laboratory know better than me what my soil might need? And obviously, I've now been growing for a long time, but I would generally encourage your listeners to really trust their power of observation themselves. Don't undermine yourself in it. Build your own power and strength and understanding through close observation.
Yeah, because every patch of land is different.
That's the thing as well. and every little patch within a patch, even sometimes, you know.
Right, because it's responding to different frequencies.
Oh yeah, there's that.
of the grower of outside
yeah.
influence.
And what was there before. In fact, I heard an amazing thing at the Oxford Real Farming Conference last year, not this past year, in 2024, where a dowsing lady had been called in by some farmers who had inexplicably poor cereals in their big fields, hundreds of acres every year. She traced it back to bone meal that a lot of quite wealthy farmers in the 19th century would use as before artificial phosphorus was around, and so they were putting bone meal on their fields. And initial results good, but then what is this? Nearly 200 years later, the soil was depressed by something. There wasn't, whatever the current farmers did, they couldn't get it to work for them. And she dowsed, and she found that it was where the bones came from was in the 19th century. A lot of it was from battlefields, human bones.
Wow.
Went to a processing plant and turned into powder and spread on the land. And those bones had the feeling, the unconscious, the energy from the battle and the people who didn't want to die, basically.
Yeah.
And that was still depressing the soil energy.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And she through dowsing and intention and saying of prayers, she got it good again. But you've got to be aware first that even that crazy thing could happen.
Right.
Then you think of how much history there is around us. You know?
Yeah, who knows what happened?
Yeah, exactly.
Right here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that makes me think about water again, because there's some people who are proving that water has memory.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so much to water that is to be explored and to be observed.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the garden, I mean, everything is water.
Yeah.
You and I are seeing each other through a film of water.
I'm sure.
You know, there's water all around us.
Yeah.
We'd be prunes.
Yeah.
You know, but that's something to also observe and keep in mind with gardening is.
Yeah. I do feel that any way you can improve the quality of your water is going to make a wonderful difference in your garden. And it was Gerald Pollack was the name of that guy who wrote The Fourth Phase of Water. And I read that book. It was written in 2012. I only read it 2 years ago, and blown away. And that combination of that and using copper and the magnetic devices, I filter all the water in the house, and generally I'm pretty careful with the water I drink, and it's really worth looking after your water.
Where's your source here?
Well, sadly, I'm on the main. Luckily, though, our main water, which means it comes from a water company, and I have had it analysed, and it doesn't have too many nasties in.
Yeah. But
you don't know what they can put in the water at any time, really.
Yeah.
But so I'd recommend anyone at least have a filter of some kind to take out the worst of it.
I had a flower farm in Los Angeles at one point. It was all Los Angeles city water.
Such good water, yeah.
And it was like watering my garden with pool water. The scent of chlorine. I felt bad for my plants. And it would leave these white rings around it with where I had drip irrigation.
Damn.
Yeah.
But well, I notice it here, not to the same extent, but even with the device of structured water, if we've watered in the polytunnel for a good half hour and I go in, I can smell the chlorine. Yeah. So I know that some is going on the ground. But I've been doing that now. This is the 13th year of using that same water for the polytunnel. And I'm not noticing any problem with growth.
Yeah.
So again, I tend to feel that a really healthy soil biology can help at least to sort that out.
What are your top 3 favorite things to grow? Top 3 least favorite things to grow?
Oh, right. My top 3 favorites would be number 1, lettuce, because that'll give you the basis of a salad almost 12 months of a year. And I know it's not the most exciting flavor, but I really wouldn't be without it. And then salad onions, you know, the greens of onion, I just love. And for me, and probably spinach. You know, notice those are all leaves. But I'm a great value of leaf person to me really makes sense, and because they give you so much, and from a small piece of ground, anyone listening, spinach, spring onions, and lettuce, you can grow a huge amount in not much space.
Yeah.
Least favorite? Well, I'm more challenged to answer that one because I'm looking around my garden a bit to kind of give me a push, but probably not going to see my least favorite thing because it won't be there.
Right. So in the past, then
I have tried something like Salsify scorzonera.
What is that?
Root vegetables, more from the medieval times, because they're not high yielding. Same as skirret as well. Those and Chinese artichokes, I find they gave me so little to eat that really I can't see the point of growing something that doesn't give you at least a worthwhile amount to eat.
No, Chinese artichoke, is that like a Jerusalem artichoke, or is that more of like
no,
Italian?
It's the English language is misleading. It's from the mint family. It's Stachys. So it's not related at all to Jerusalem artichoke, which is the sunflower family.
Yeah.
And then you've got the globe artichoke, which is thistle family. So we've got artichokes for three totally different plants.
Okay, yeah.
All of which I like to grow except for the Chinese artichoke because it's just a waste of time, really. God, what else would I not like to grow? Bush tomatoes I find a challenge. So indeterminate tomatoes, because I find nearly always I'll get some slugs under the leaves, the slugs eat the fruit, and then they get late blight towards the end of summer. And so I grow all my tomatoes under cover as cordon plants, indeterminate. And just in this climate, I really struggle with plants that need a lot of warmth. So I've never actually been a great fan for some reason or had a great ability to grow wonderful sweet peppers. I don't know quite why that is, but I can grow them. They do grow for me, but I don't get what I consider a worthwhile harvest. So, I'd almost put them in that category, but I'd always love just to have a couple of chili plants.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite food memories?
It goes back to when I was 15 and my first conscious awareness of the beautiful flavour of vegetables, and it was these broad or fava beans, which my mother had cooked, and we were eating at lunchtime after doing a morning on the farm. I was really hungry, and I was hoovering down the food, and I suddenly realised, God, these beans have amazing flavour, and I was savouring every mouthful, which I hadn't before. So I don't know what caused that or brought that on, but that stuck with me, and that was one of the, a big motivation in growing my own food, because I could see the value of it to get this extra level of flavour that you don't find when you buy food often.
Do you remember how they were cooked?
Yeah, it wasn't anything particularly original. They were just lightly boiled with some mint and not too much. So but they were soft, and I can see them and taste them now. Actually, just melt in your mouth.
Yeah. And broad beans are coming up when do you start harvesting?
Yeah,
those?
well, they're well up now, and they've had a good winter, thank goodness. So they're ahead of normal, and just depends if we get a significant late frost, but I'm pretty sure this spring we're not going to, in which case they could start cropping here around the middle of May. When I grew up, it was never before June, so that's an example of how one vegetable has really benefited from slightly milder winters. Normally we can do an autumn sowing, but some years you lose them. Recently, we haven't lost them so often when the temperature goes below about -8 or -10 centigrade, about 18 Fahrenheit is their limit. And same for broccoli, actually, because I talk a lot with people in different climates, and we can grow this beautiful sprouting broccoli. There's two little plants out there on the bed, actually, one with lovely white broccoli that I'm picking at the moment. And that plant was sown last June, and it gets quite big, therefore, by the end of autumn. But if people feedback from Germany, for example, where they can have these quite hard frosts in autumn, their broccoli don't survive, in winter. But here they do, and we get these really early crops. It's wonderful.
Great. And then you have some new books coming out.
Yeah,
we'll just plug those real quick.
This is just crazy. It's number 16 of what I've written, and I keep saying this is my last book, but I'm working with these publishers, Dowding Kindersley, now, who are very persuasive, but also I really like the way they work with their authors. They give me great support in writing, and they made it much easier for me to write this book. I wrote it last summer. I only started in June. I was somewhat taken aback that I could even do that. It did involve some early mornings, and they've got it printed through the winter, and it's coming out on April the 9th. And Grow Together is all about combinations of plants that you can grow without using more space, that plants that like each other. So my Brussels sprouts, in fact, there's beautiful Brussels sprouts over there, which started life in a bed of carrots. So basically I sow the carrots, normal sowing of carrots in late March here, fleece over, they come up strongly, and then they're cropping from the middle of June. And I pull enough at 2-foot intervals, 60-centimetre intervals, to plant a Brussels sprout plant in the middle of June, one that I've sown about 5-6 weeks earlier. And that sprout plant slowly grows, surrounded by carrots. I am convinced there's mycorrhizal association between them, because to me they look faster growing even for having those carrots around. People say that brassicas don't associate mycorrhizally. I'm sure they do. I think there's a lot to be found out on that. And we're harvesting carrots for another 6 weeks after planting the Brussels, and gradually the Brussels get more and more space as we harvest all the carrots. And before you know it, you've got big sprout plants. And so in that 1 year, we've had a fantastic harvest of carrots. And through the autumn and winter, we're getting Brussels sprouts as well, without adding any more compost. So it's no dig helps to make that possible. There's no weed pressure. The book is 50 combinations of all different things you can do like that. Often planting things, say, 4 to 5 weeks before another crop finishes, but really close, or even putting, say, kale or soy cabbage amongst onions as they're maturing. There's not really room for the kale or the cabbage, but they just get their feet in the ground. And when you harvest the first crop, in this case onions, they've got space and they can grow really fast because they've got their roots down already, even if they haven't made a big plant at that point. So fantastic potential from doing that. And particularly, I would say, for people with small spaces, got a bit more time to do it. Grow Together, check it out.
Yeah, great. Gardens of Earthly Delight is currently a one-man show, produced and hosted by myself, Andrew Valenti. All the music you heard in this episode is by Constant Smiles, including the theme song titled Time Measured in Moonflowers. The Gardens of Earthly Delight logo is designed by Hunky Kitty. All relevant links to this episode can be found in the show notes and on our website, gardensoferthlydelight.com. Please show your support by leaving a 5-star review, subscribing, and sharing this podcast far and wide. You can also subscribe to our Substack, where you can get exclusive content and bonus material that didn't make it into the final cut. Our social media is at Gardens of Earthly Delight Pod, and you can find me at andrewvalenti.av. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.